I'm now joined by Erik Talkin, Executive Director of the Food Bank for Santa Barbara County. Erik, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Catherine.
I know that you're going to talk a little bit about a session called The Future of Social Problem Solving. I'm hoping you can tell me a little bit about what the specific topic was about and who the speaker was.
Very much so. Well, the speaker was a guy called Andrew Wolk, who runs an organization called Root Cause. And they're very much interested in what are called social impact markets. So when we were having the conversation, it began by looking at saying, what is going on? Are nonprofits actually able to move the needle on the issues that they're dealing with? We're spending trillions and trillions every year. 115 nonprofit organizations open every day. It seems like 100 of them open in Santa Barbara, but perhaps not. And areas like obesity is rocketing up, which is of concern to the food bank. Poverty is on the rise by 18% in the last couple of years. So the needle's not being moved on these key issues. So it's like, what can we do to change the conversation and make things actually happen?
So what were the primary takeaways you had from this particular session?
Well, basically, it talks about social impact markets. So there are three types of market that we're familiar with. One is a standard capital market where innovation and performance are rewarded in that you come up with an idea, you get more seed money and investment, and the bad ideas get winnowed out, and then the good performers are rewarded, and then you're able to put more money back into innovation. But then when you look at the social market of what we do in nonprofit organizations, that kind of circle, whether it's virtuous or not, does not really work. Because I could be doing a very mediocre job with my programs, yet I could have a sterling development department and be pulling in the bucks and opening more programs. So there's a kind of a break there. So they were suggesting that with a social impact market, it's a way of getting social entrepreneurs, business people who are interested in investing in nonprofit organizations to get their interest in what you're doing. And what they're looking for are people who are actually able to do what they say they're going to do. So they can prove their performance, they can prove that their innovations can be scalable. They can go out to other nonprofits and they can do the same thing and make a successful idea work. So it's a way of solving that kind of broken market system that they see.
And how will you be using this yourself with the food bank?
There are two kind of key things that we're going to use. First of all, performance evaluation. Obviously it's always been of concern to foundations and ourselves, but actually it's very hard to prove what is the end result of what you do. So we can have so many people who come to a food distribution and they get fed that day. Great. But what happens? What is the change in society as a result of that? So as a result of us going to this presentation, we're actually going to be applying for a grant from the Santa Barbara Foundation, one of their mini grants, to put together a much more detailed performance evaluation. We actually have a model that we're going to use. We're going to get a couple of interns from UCSB to work very carefully on each one of our programs so that we really can tie down quantifiably what the end results are. So that if we as a food bank went to social entrepreneurs, we could say, look, we are guaranteeing this result with this investment. And also we're creating programs that we feel are scalable. They can go out and be used by other people, and that's going to make their investment so much more attractive to them.
So this is an organizational commitment that you have for how you'll be assessing kind of the strength of all of your programs and how they're best established to support your ideal clientele.
Exactly. I mean, we're lucky as the food bank that we have a network of people to work with already. We have 260 agencies that are members of the food bank. So we're already swapping programs, best practice, and this just gives us a chance to really go out to other people, perhaps statewide and nationally, and say, we have this network, let us develop ideas and we'll pass them out through the network, but then also out through the network of other food banks around the country.
What are some other suggestions that you have, either for your own coworkers or other nonprofit professionals, on how they could use these lessons?
Well, a lot of other kind of secondary lessons came out. They were really stressing the need for new leadership where innovation and valued performance is rewarded. So that's the kind of the key thing. and that we need to focus on building more sustainable organizations so that the organization is not dependent on the largesse of a particular group of donors or a foundation, that they have that sustainability built into the core of the actual organization. And then the other key lesson is really adaptive learning, in terms of you have to, month by month, be aware of the environment around you, to just step back and look and see that things have changed and that you have to change as a result of that, or else you're going to be stuck.
I think that's a really particularly important lesson right now, especially with where the economy has been. And there's such a challenge in really taking the time and the opportunity to step back and look bigger picture. Any final lessons that you'd like to share with our audience today?
Just that information is really key, that you need to be gathering more and more information. Sometimes it's a pain with our social programs that we do to bug people for information, but we can use that information not just ourselves, but if we share it in more of an open source way, we can do some amazing things with that shared information.
Great. Erik, thanks so much for being here today and sharing your lessons with me as well as with the larger community here in Santa Barbara.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks for being here today to hear lessons from the Stanford Nonprofit Management Institute. You've been able to hear from some lessons from 6 of our nonprofit leaders. As Ron mentioned to you earlier, the Santa Barbara Foundation and the Orfalea Foundations were able to sponsor 18 participants in attending the conference. Every one of those leaders is committed not only to applying the lessons to their own organizations, but also to applying them to our community as a whole. How fortunate we are that we have such a dedicated leadership and nonprofit sector here in Santa Barbara County. I hope perhaps you've learned some lessons that you can also apply to your own work and to any nonprofits that you may be associated with. If there are any topics that are of particular interest to you, you can also review the Stanford website and download either materials or the podcasts if you'd like to hear for yourself. On behalf of the Santa Barbara Foundation and the Orfalea Foundations, thanks so much for being here today with us.